Hi, everybody. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about loving your neighbors. So basically, I wanted to share kind of a testimony of what it was like when we moved into a new neighborhood in Lago Vista some years ago. One thing I want to share is like overcoming doubts and fears about reaching out, and then also just kind of pushing past the obstacles that might come that the enemy might oppose you in. So, just to kind of be real and raw about my journey and how I kind of managed to navigate through all of those things. So, we sold our house in Cedar Park, I don't know, 7-ish years ago, 8. And it sold really quickly. So, we didn't know if we wanted to buy a house or build a house. So, we moved into a rent house in Lago Vista. And it wasn't a neighborhood that we weren't really looking at. It just wasn't the area we were particularly interested in. But the first night we were there, we knew that there was a tiny peekaboo view of the lake. But the first night we were there, the sun set like right in the middle of the view, and it was really spectacular. So we knew that that little row of houses had a sunset view of the lake. But it took us over a year of looking at houses and looking at lots before we could make a decision. And in that time frame, a lot on the other side of our neighbor became available. And so I knew it had a sunset view of the lake. We flew a drone, we climbed trees. We couldn't see it at all because there was so much foliage, but I just heard from the Lord that it was going to work out, that I was going to have a view of the lake if we bought the lot, not to worry. And some of the trees were even on neighbors' lots. Again, I just felt this assurance, like not to worry. So we began kind of measuring and plotting before we made our final decision. Well, I had not in that year plus time been brave enough to meet my new neighbors, or there hadn't been a time. And I had some reservations because of some neighbors in the past that kind of felt judged by. So there was part of me that just wanted to be private, especially in the beginning. We were just renting and we weren't staying. And then once we started really seriously looking at this lot, I thought, I really need to meet the neighbors. And I heard the Lord specifically say that this was our mission field, that we were to love our neighbors. And so those two things were really important in the process of loving our neighbors, that this is our mission field, and then two, that not to worry, that the view is going to work out. So one day I happened to be out there with our realtor, our husband, measuring, kind of plotting before we actually bought the land. And one of the neighbor's relatives that I still hadn't met came out and was kind of fussing because we were on their property as we were trying to measure. And there was some righteous indignation that rose up, just that I can't allow this to be the determining factor of my relationship with these people, because they have no idea that, one, we live on the other side of them currently, and that, two, we're going to be buying this lot and living on the other side of them. So I just felt the Holy Spirit just saying, don't settle for that, as a defining moment for the beginning of a relationship with these people. So I watched and waited for opportunity to meet the neighbors. So one day I'm pulling in and I see the neighbor headed to the mailbox. So I parked real quick and ran back out there. And as I approached, she had some bald spots on her head, and I could tell she had been through chemo as I approached. And I introduced myself and struck up a conversation. And she just said, "I'm sorry, I've been such a bad neighbor. I haven't introduced myself, but I've been going through chemo." And her husband had been on disability for a long time, like 20 years, and was not well, and had also that year had a couple of heart attacks. And then their daughter just got diagnosed, their one and only child, with a heart condition. So I was just floored by all these problems that they had. I loved on her. And then we got to be a little more friendly. And then lo and behold, her husband, the ambulances would come. Like, it happened every few months. It seemed like something was going on. He'd fall, or he had a couple more heart issues. So anyway, I was able to bring food to them and love on them. And they were just so gracious and grateful. And it turned out to be a lifelong relationship. Even though they've moved now, we still keep in touch. And so they love the Lord. And it was a sweet thing. They were just in need. They just needed someone to give them some encouragement when they needed it, to be there She would text me in emergencies and I could come on, rush over next door. So it ended up being an amazing thing. And I was so glad that I listened to the Lord and pursued that and wasn't put off or offended, or didn't let myself get offended, even though, that we had a little bit of a controversy in the beginning. So then the next neighbor came into question. As we moved on the other side, started building. Well, we didn't move yet, but as we started building, we met the neighbors on the other side of that. And this couple was great. We just met the man. He was an older man, probably around 80, and he was super friendly. We were cutting down trees, and he mentioned the squirrels getting on his porch. So we told him we would cut down his tree, and he tried to pay us. And we said, no, we're already out here. It's no problem. And so we had a great relationship going with that neighbor. Well, then one day we got a letter, a certified letter at our rent house. So this is 2-3 houses away. Instead of coming down to talk to us, we just get this letter from it that he's upset about, saying that we cannot build our driveway where it's marked off to be built. So I walked down to talk to him. He wouldn't answer the door. And I'm just thinking, okay, here we go again. This is not how the Lord intends this relationship to go. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to figure it out. So when I finally got a hold of him, my husband wasn't around, and he told me that he had just gotten off the phone with the inspector and that we would not be allowed to build our driveway where it was, because our driveway was right up against the property line, which you're allowed to do because of the easement. You can build flat work over the easement, but I don't think he knew that. I think he thought it was going to be 5 or 10 feet away from the property line, which we could not do because of the terrain. We're on a big hillside, and the way the driveway was, we can't move the driveway. There's no way. We'd have to start over on the whole design. There was no way we could change anything. Plus, the inspection had already been signed off on, so I knew that he probably was mistaken or the inspector was confused. So I called up the inspector, and the inspector said, "Ma'am, I just got off the phone with him, and that is not what I said." So we called a meeting, and again, my husband, our realtors couldn't be there, so I was going to face the neighbor who was selling his house, his realtor, the new people who wanted to buy the house and their realtor, and come to find out the reason our neighbor was upset was because years ago when he built his house, he put his water pipe on our lot on the other side of his property line so that our driveway was going to be built on top of it. And that's why he was upset. So obviously that had to be revealed to the new buyers of his house. So I just remember feeling like this intimidation coming at me and this bullying and lying. And I just thought, I don't have to defend anything. The inspector signed off on this. He told me on the phone that it's not a problem. So the neighbor called a meeting with the inspector and the realtors and all that. And so I ended up having to go by myself. And so I just felt this calm assurance from the Lord. Again, not my norm, because there have been lots of times in situations like that I feel really intimidated and nervous and what to say. But I just felt like the Lord saying, this is your mission field. I'm going to show up. You don't have to say anything. And I did. I just showed up on my driveway, and the inspector just kind of explained very much like he did to me on the phone, very calm and matter of fact. And then the neighbor didn't say a word. I mean, he had nothing to say. It was all false. It was all fear-based. And it just ended up being something that wasn't important in the long run, because we said, hey, we want to be nice neighbors. You can leave your water pipe there. We have to put ours in there too. And there's no problem with having our driveway on top of them. In fact, we can... he had to have it rerouted because our construction workers did cut his pipe at one point. So we were like, we are paying for the hole to be dug anyway, so you won't have to pay that cost to have your pipe fixed correctly. So anyway, we just reached out to him, loved him, assured him, extended grace, and it ended up working out, even though he left the neighborhood. And our new neighbors were really gracious and kind, and we're not sure what all the fuss was about, but the new neighbors are there to this day, and we love them too. So I just want to encourage you guys that even if you feel intimidated or have doubts, some of the doubts I had was, just having close relationships with people who live next door can sometimes be messy, and people can see your dirty laundry, so to speak, and you're kind of vulnerable, people knocking on your door at different times and interrupting your day and time. So these can be negative thoughts that come to kind of discourage you. But I just want to encourage everyone that the Lord is going to guide and bless these relationships, and He's going to give you boundaries and give you a sense of security and peace through this process as you reach out. So don't be afraid to meet your neighbors, and maybe you've known your neighbors for years, but don't be afraid to meet a new neighbor. Maybe you need to go a street over or a block walk or something, and just start to see somebody walking their dog regularly, and you strike up a conversation and you feel a nudge from the Holy Spirit. Don't be shy. If you hear the Holy Spirit tapping on your heart to say something, then just say, "Hi, how's it going? I like your dog," or something to that effect. It doesn't have to be super scary and spooky. Anyway, love you guys. I hope this was a blessing to you. Have a great day.